I'm Sausan Asfari, the co-founder of the Galilee Foundation. And for those of you who are familiar with our work, thank you so much for your support throughout the years. And for those of you who are not familiar with our work, please do check us out on www.galileefoundation.org.uk. And we can also check us out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'd like to introduce you to our board member and trustee, Khalil Jahshan, who is also the director of the Arab Research Center in Washington, and he will be moderating the discussion. So Khalil, I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sausan, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon from Washington, D.C. We have an international audience and participants today. So we are probably at 2 or 3 time zones are involved in this group. Welcome to this very special webinar focusing on what does Israel's new far-right government mean for Palestinians. And here we mean both Palestinians who happen to carry Israeli citizenship or live in Israel, and Palestinians who live under Israeli occupation. And we have a great group of panelists today whom I will introduce to you after saying a couple of words about the subject matter. Essentially, as you all know, Benjamin Netanyahu was sworn in on December 29th, and actually the day before, and on that day, when his government was sworn in as leader of Israel's new government, which was dubbed universally, actually, in Israel itself, throughout the region, and in Europe and in the United States as the most extremist right-wing government. This is Netanyahu's 6th term as prime minister, so he has served almost 15 years before in that capacity. So he is a known currency, if you will, to most of us who happen to be observers or students of Arab-Israeli affairs. But the makeup of his government, with the partners of the ultra-nationalist and ultra-religious background, he is kind of bringing faces and ideas into his government that even in the past in Israel were considered somewhat marginalized or considered outside the mainstream. And in addition, of course, to the legal issues involved in the makeup of this government, lawyers remind us that the prime minister himself, Netanyahu, has been actually since 2019, November of 2019, he has been charged with fraud, bribery, and breach of trust, and yet he hasn't been necessarily taken to court yet. But 3 other cabinet members in his current government have also been either convicted or charged in the past of a range of issues or charges, including supporting terrorism, inciting racism against Arab citizens of Israel. And even one of them, Aryeh Deri of the Shas party, was barred by the Supreme Court of Israel on January 18th from continuing to serve as minister in the cabinet. So he's temporarily kind of relieved from that duty until further notice. But essentially, the focus today is not on the makeup of the government per se, although we might have to refer to it here and there. But the focus today, as I said, is reflected clearly in the title in terms of the impact of this government on Palestinians in Israel and the occupied territories, the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, with a particular focus on the issue of education, with the Galilee Foundation's mission being totally focused on education for the purpose of giving young people hope in a peaceful future in the region. So we hope to kind of channel our discussion today in that direction. If you're interested in the Galilee Foundation and you're not aware of our mission, please take a look at our website, galileefoundation.org.uk. Again, galileefoundation.org.uk, and both look at our mission and feel free to use the donate button, because frankly, we function on the basis of support from people like yourselves who are attending this webinar. Let me proceed again quickly with introducing our speakers in the order that they will speak. They will each have 10 minutes to just present their own answer to the theme of this webinar. And then we will use the balance of our time in the art of conversation, giving you, our audience, our guests, the opportunity to ask questions. And if you have a question, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your page and identify yourself if you don't mind. Mention the person you want to address your question to. I'll be more than delighted to read your question and send it in the right direction so that we can have a quick and constructive discussion after the presentations. Let me introduce our first speakers. First is Dr. Hassan Jabbareen, and congratulations, Hassan. He had a new member of the family born today, so thank you for being with us. We appreciate that. Hassan is essentially a lawyer and an activist. He is the founder and general director of Adala, which is the equivalent of, for those of you familiar with the American scene, the NAACP, if you will, of the Palestinian community in Israel. It's the legal center for Arab minority rights in Israel. Hassan has served as Adala's general and legal director since its establishment in 1996, and he holds a PhD in law from the Hebrew University. Next is Dr. Areen Hawari, who holds a PhD in gender studies. Her research focuses mostly on the Palestinians in Israel in terms of their activism and a focus on gender issues, Palestinian women between feminism, religion, and the state. And she is the director of gender studies program in Mad Al Carmel, which is the Arab Center for Applied Social Research based in Haifa since 2014. Last but not least, our good friend Sami Abu Shhadi is a historian, a political activist for many years, serves on the leadership board of directors of many NGOs in Palestine and Israel, and is a national politician. He was elected to the 22nd Knesset in 2019 and served through the 23rd and 24th Knesset. He is no longer in the Knesset. He left that work in November of 2022. He is also well known for his political activism in his hometown Jaffa, where he served actually on the municipal council in the 1990s. That's the municipal council of Jaffa, Tel Aviv. So he has dabbled in both local and national politics on the Israeli scene. Again, in terms of the topic, Adala, as the new Israeli government took office, they did an excellent service to all of us who are researchers on Middle East politics by issuing an excellent study of the new government and its policy guidelines. And they looked at it, of course, from their perspective, a legal perspective, and identified kind of four major areas where the new government seems to be heading. The first theme was Jewish supremacy and racial segregation as a guiding principle. Two, the two-tiered nature of the system they seem to be advocating in terms of governance for Palestinians and Jews inside Israel. Deepening the policy of Judaization, as many leaders have said before and after they were sworn in, that tends to pour or move toward racial discrimination, and the criminalization of Palestinian expression and identity. So with that as a kind of general parameters for our discussion today, I will cede the microphone to my good friend Hassan Jabbareen to give us a legal background, particularly since under his leadership, this study serves as kind of like the basis for analysis of where the Israeli government is today and is heading tomorrow. Hassan, the microphone is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Khalil. And thank you for inviting us and having this webinar. Yes, everyone can, if he or she are interested to know about the details of the coalition agreements, they can find our analysis, as Khalil mentioned, in our website. And there we have deep analysis about the agreements and how they will affect the rule of law and the Palestinian rights within the Green Line and in the Palestinian occupied territory of 1967. This government, as also Khalil mentioned, that is considered based on Israel perspective and the international perspective as the most extremist government in Israel history. And in fact, this is the most extremist government that the Likud, as leading and ruler political party, that they form. Usually the Likud is pragmatical political party in their forming the government, meaning when they follow usually their partners who made with them the coalition. And usually in the history of the governments of the Likud, they succeeded in somehow always to bring political parties from the central, Zionist center political party. But this time, the only political parties or political groups that joined the Likud are one, the most extremist, ultra nationalist, and considered racist political party, which led by Smotrich and Ben Gvir, and the Haredim political parties. Now, the Smotrich Ben Gvir political party are interested in two parts. One, Smotrich is interested in the settlement, interested in the rights of the Palestinians live in West Bank and Gaza. Ben Gvir is interested on mostly on the Green Line and on the rights of the Palestinians inside Israel. Meaning those two leaders, their main job description is to target the Palestinian rights. The other group is the Haredim group. It's true, the Haredim don't target the Palestinian rights. However, the Haredim, the most important thing for them, the identity of the state as Jewish religious state. So here we have the formula. You have the parties with the Likud. One, target the Palestinian citizen of Israel, the Palestinians and the West Bank and East Jerusalem. I didn't mention Gaza. And the other target the identity, meaning to make the state thicker as a Jewish religious state. And those, of course, Jewish and religious state will affect also directly the Palestinians' right. This is why, if anyone will read the coalition agreements of this government, will see how much the Palestinians are central in the coalition agreements of this government. The main thing, the major thing that you can see in this coalition is to implement the Jewish nation state law. This is why the first item in the agreement that Eretz Israel, Great Israel, meaning Palestine, historic Palestine, mandatory Palestine, is the land of the Jewish people, and the only group that is entitled to exercise its self-determination in Israel is the Jewish people. And this is the first article of the Jewish nation state law, meaning this government negates the rights of the Palestinians for self-determination, negates the group rights of the Palestinian people. And if you go with details of this coalition, you will find that in the West Bank, the most target there, the land, to confiscate more land, to expand the settlements, and to legalize the small illegal settlements. When I say illegal settlement, even in the term of Israel as illegal, that they didn't have a permit to legalize them. About the Palestinian city of Israel, you have there also to continue the colonization of the Bedouin land and to control more the land in the south. And of course, the major thing that you can notice, how to use power and force power against the Palestinians inside Israel. About the Jewish identity of the state, it's here, you can see it in the education system, in social and economic rights, that they will give more benefits or more budgets to groups that they emphasize the Jewish identity of the state. And of course, as Khalil said, all of this will affect the issue of criminal law, where to criminalize Palestinian freedom of expression. Of course, this is not to target only the Palestinian rights, also to target Israeli citizens when you speak about religion and state, to target them when you speak about criminalization of freedom of expression. One of the aspects that took, those aspects of the agreement didn't take the attention of the international community, and were not in the debate, in the public debate in Israel. In fact, we, the Palestinian group, Adala and other, that they raised the issue of the items that I mentioned, how this government is very dangerous for the Palestinian rights. The main focus of the international community and the Israeli public is about the legal reform or the legal changes that this government want to make. This government also want to limit the power of Israeli Supreme Court and to give more control to the executive branch to control the nomination of judges and the nomination of attorney generals and legal advisors, and to limit the scope of the power, the judicial power of the Israeli Supreme Court. Judicial power in two aspects, in the constitutional power to cancel laws and in administrative power to decide that the decisions of the admin are illegal. So in fact, this government wants in fact to erase and delete we can say the independence of the Israeli judicial system. The Israeli judicial system, this government wanted to be controlled totally by the government itself. This aspect raised the attention of the Israeli public, and for the first time in the Israeli history, we see a serious protest against the government. This is the most major, wide, and powerful protest against governments in Israel since 1948. And the groups that joined this protest are various from different groups, political groups, economic, social activists, and of course, here the international community came and start to give its comments. We know that the US give attention to this legal reform, and some of the EU states also give their attention and give their remarks to Israeli government against this reform. The reason that the international community allow itself to intervene here, although it's considered from diplomatic aspect that it's internal matter, is because they found also the support from Israeli public, that many from the Israeli public have the mobility against this government. Now, where we will stand as the Palestinians. There is dialectic here between the two aspects, the aspect of legal reform and the aspects that refer to directly to the Palestinian rights. Now, the fact that the international community became interested and will be interested in the legal reform that this government wants to change, it will bring its attention more to what will happen with the Palestinians inside Israel and the West Bank. This is our hope, of course. Sometimes our hope won't be fulfilled, but this is our hope, that now this attention bring back our case, because the case of the Palestinian generally was not in the, especially after the Ukraine war, wasn't as a major focus of the international community. So this aspect that the Israeli public against this government in the issue of legal reform, in fact, bring us back, because many of the protesters, leaders emphasize that the Palestinians, especially the Palestinian citizens of Israel, will be the major victim of this legal reform. Now,
1 minute, Hassan.
Yeah. Now, yes, we, the Palestinians, are not part of the protest, and we have many reasons. We don't want, we cannot find ourselves protesting in Tel Aviv in saving Israel democracy when we see that Israel is not a democratic state, because also we see ourselves as victims of the legal system. So it's very difficult for the Palestinians to participate in this protest. However, we are aware and we agree with the protesters that we will be the main victim of this legal reform. However, we are with or without the legal reform will be the main victim because the other aspects of the governmental coalition. This also again will bring the issue to which extent the international tribunals, international courts will listen to Palestinian bodies. Today we have the case before the ICC. Or the big question will be whether those changes in Israel internal politics will affect the intervention of the ICC or not. So here in one side, I will summarize. Yes, this government target mainly the Palestinian rights. However, from the dialectic perspective, this target will bring more attention internationally, and maybe hopefully will bring back the Palestinian case before the international community, and the Palestinian case, which I mean Palestinians live under the 1967 occupied territories, and Palestinians live in the Green Line. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan, very much. Our next presenter is Dr. Areen Hawari, Gender Studies Director at Mada Al-Karmel in Haifa. Areen, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Khalil, and thank you for the invitation. Since I believe that settler colonialism is not only a structure, but also a process, and that democracy is not only a procedure, but mainly an essence, I would explain the change in Israel as radical one, but only within the process and the procedural level. The structure of the colonial project is solid and stable, I believe. However, the process is by definition unstable, dynamic, and subject to change in a manner consistent with the change in the political players. What could be traced as new is the change is that the change in the process in this time is revolutionary in Israel. We witnessed a change before, but they were within the elites with a stable consensus, an elite that pretended or tried to separate the state from the Zionist project. This separation of state and Zionism that was reflected in procedural democracy in Israel enabled the states to to be administrated institutionally, regardless of the change in the government, and kept the interests of the majority that lies, of course, within the Zionist spectrum. A situation in which in the procedural democracy, was part of the efficiency of the colonialism, bureaucracy, separation of powers, independence of the judicial system from the other powers in the state, but not from the Zionist project. So when the democratic processes, not the democratic essence served the colonial project, the government was stable. However, the new elite in the recent years became in great disagreement with the old elites, not in the essence, but rather in the status of the institutions. They do not disagree on the colonial project, which means among which the control over the Palestinian land, the settlements, the expulsion, the displacement, the political persecution, the targeting the Palestinian identity. They do not disagree on this at all. Even Zionist left party merits, known as the Human Rights Party, in which the last elections declared its death, did not disagree with these principles. The new elites believe that this democracy is not serving their interests, so they want to change, and they want to change in order to support both colonial project and the interests of the new elites. If we go far with the procedural democracy approach, actually this new elite was elected by the majority. By saying this, I don't mean by any way that this government is not the most racist government and is not a fascist government. Of course, it is like this, and we experience its practices every day. As for the Palestinians within the Green Line, those who I'm going to talk more and mainly about them in the remaining minutes. Sorry. The Palestinian politics in the Green Line used a democratic margin to challenge the state's policies. Balad Party specifically tried to challenge even the structure of the state using this margin. However, this margin has gradually diminished, and since the nation-state law 2018 may have ended. And finally, with Ben-Gvir-Smotrich government, Ben-Gvir-Smotrich government whipped out the remains of any illusion. But the Palestinian political actors continued even after the nation-state law, and specifically during the years of the joint list, to act as if this margin still exists. Since the nation-state law, the question of challenging the state structure was opened again. Within the United List, even Balad, who challenged the structure of the state and challenged at least discursively the Jewish state by calling for a state for all its citizens, was not engaged in this challenge. The United List, the illusion of the unity, and the struggle for more mandates in the Knesset and for more so-called material achievements under the containment policies prevented or even blocked any discussion about the political solution and about the liberation. Even after it was very clear that the state is not separating itself from the Zionist movement, the United List continued to maneuver in the margin, a politics that led to a comparison between Benjamin Netanyahu and Gantz in favor of Gantz, of course. This turn reached its climax with the entry of the Southern Islamic movement to Bennett and Lapid's government. Since years and boldly within the new Netanyahu government, roles have changed. Instead of us challenging the so-called democratic margin in Israel, Israel now is challenging us by announcing the abolition of this margin and by opening the way for us to accept only one choice, living in the shadow of apartheid state. This situation of maneuvering the margin and of depoliticization led to the failure in dealing with political and social challenging that we face in the latest years as Palestinians in the Green Line. I will give one important example. The organized crime that is viewed as the most important issue that worries the Palestinians in the Green Line. We experience a yearly escalation in this phenomenon, which by itself plays as a tool of control through the fall apart of social fabric and fragmentation of the society, and through promoting the gang leaders to be mediators in disputes. Adding to this, the coalition agreement of the new government come to perpetuate the political dealing with the crime, carrying two main slogans that were raised by Ben-Gvir. The first one, we will show who is the owner of the house, and the second one, we will restore rule and control to the public sphere. And by commitment to establish a special unit in the Shabak to allow this institution to intervene in criminal cases under the pretext of fighting crime within the Arab society. It also guaranteed legal amendment that expanded the power of the Minister of Interior Security and fully subjugate the police to his policies. If we look at the way of the Palestinian political actors, I mean the High Follow-up Committee and the Palestinian parties within the Green Line, in response to this situation, we can clearly see that the political collapse. While we believe that the violence among the Palestinian community, and while they believe, is not separated from the violent structure of that state, and while the Palestinian leaders and the political activists believe that the crime among the Palestinian community is also a result of the police collusion with the criminal organizations, and that the Shabak is involved in the crime. If we review the political actions against this situation—
You have one more minute, Ari. Sorry.
I looked, I saw that we have 3, but anyway, okay.
Go ahead.
If we review the political actions against this situation, we not only see the weakness and the failure in organizing events that reflects national or collective strategic plans, but also that of unified discourse or attitudes against this police. Thus, the response to the crime is limited of statements of denunciation. I would continue. I would say that if we look at that, the same can be said like about the reactions that followed the imposition of harsh sentences against the Palestinian youth who participated in Habbat al-Karami, the events of May. The same reactions we can see, and the same politics were responsible for excluding Balad Party from the United List when the later insisted to reclaim its political role in challenging the Zionist colonial structure. Finally, I believe, and I would say, that the Palestinian political movements and players who call for liberation and who do not coexist with Zionism are asked to raise the question of the regime and to call for justice, but this time for all historic Palestine, which clearly became one political unit. A state for all its citizens should be the solution in all historic Palestine. The Palestinians should be united and part of the benefit from the international solidarity movement and human rights organizations who support the Palestinian liberation and fight against the extreme right parties and liberal economic policies, those who also defend the individual rights and freedom, and specifically when the racism and the apartheid is very bold and can be seen all over the world. And thank you.
Thank you, Irene, very much. Now our third panelist or speaker is Sami Abu Shhadi, who is, as I said earlier, a Palestinian historian and a former member of the Israeli Knesset. Sami, the microphone is yours. You have 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Khalil. Thank you for this invitation to talk to this honorable audience. And thanks for the Galilee Foundation for giving me this chance. I would like, first of all, to make a few terms clear before I get into my claims here in this 10-minute talk. When we are talking about extreme right, Khalil, all the time, extreme right, what is the meaning of extreme right in the Israeli context? In the Israeli context, when people say that they are in the right-wing politics and those who are competing now, who is more right-wing politics, who is more extreme, in the Israeli context, it means who is more more ready to go for violence towards anything that got to do with Arabs and Palestinians. When we are talking about extreme right, it means who have more extreme views towards anything that got to do with Arabs and Palestinians. This is the meaning of extreme right in the Israeli context. The competition between them is not regarding the economic different policies or social different policies. What it really means is who is more racist and who is more ready to go to violence when we are talking about Arabs and Palestinians. I think, and this should be clear. Another very, very important thing, we are taking it as taken for granted that when we are talking about the Palestinians, we include also the Palestinian minority who are living as 20% of the Israeli population nowadays, the indigenous community of this part of the world, and we call them Palestinians. But here, we should also say that Israel do not acknowledge this national identity. The state of Israel, in the official narrative, they don't see that we have a national component in our identity. So now when we are saying that we are Palestinians, Khalil, from the Israeli point of view, we are lying to the people. Now, this continuous lie of reinventing us as different small religious minorities that do not have a national identity, that don't have a national belonging, is also affecting the policies and the legislation which is happening lately. When we are talking about the new law which wants to ban us from being able to raise the Palestinian flag, how can we understand this? The state doesn't want us to raise the Palestinian flag. Still, according to the Israeli law, the Palestinian flag is not a crime. And they have peace relationship with the PA. After the Oslo agreement, they are dealing with the PLO, and the Palestinian flag is legal. But now we are hearing about a law that wants to ban the Palestinian citizens of Israel from raising the Palestinian flag. I want to say in a few sentences about this, Khalil, because in my point of view, this is a very, very dangerous process. And I think this is one of the most cruel laws I can think of. The state is continuing the old policies of destroying the Palestinian identity of the Palestinian minority who are living within the Israeli state. They do not acknowledge our national belonging, our national identity, and they are continuing to destroy it. And now they are also raising a law, they want to discuss a law that is banning us from raising the Palestinian flag because we have been struggling to keep our national identity for decades. They feel that they have lost this war. They are bringing it again with this very extreme right-wing government. And when we're talking about very extreme, my fellows mentioned few times Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. We are talking about two ministers that were accused according to the Israeli law, not from the Palestinian point of view. From the Israeli point of view, according to the Israeli law, we are having two ministers in this government that were accused of terrorism, according to the Israeli law. So you have terrorists leading in. This party is having nearly 25% of the Israeli government. It's not a small marginal racist minority. We are talking about 14 seats out of the 64 seats. Something like 22, 23% of the government are from this extreme party that the two main leaders of the party were accused of terrorism. And now they are bringing all their violent terrorist discourse into the Israeli politics. One of them, Ben-Gvir, is considered the student of Meir Kahane. We are talking about the deterioration of Israel towards extreme right. When his master, Kahane, was elected in the 1980s, the extreme right in the Knesset, people like Shamir, who was considered a terrorist and according to the British law, used to leave the court of the Knesset when Kahana was talking. He was considered too extreme, and he had a very small minority of supporters. His student Ben-Gvir now is having 14 seats, which is something like 14% of the Israeli parliament. And he is considered totally legitimate, and he is a minister in Netanyahu's government. So it's a very, very dangerous and extreme government. Regarding things that got to do with education, Khalil, there's also a new, few very important things are happening. First of all, most of the world don't know that the Israeli education system, like the rest of the Israeli society, is built on racial separation. More than 90% of the population in the state of Israel lives Arabs alone and Jews alone. This is the way the state is planned to keep racial separation. So we have different education systems. We don't have one education system. There are 3 different official education systems in Israel. One for the Arab Palestinian minority, of course, as I told you, they don't acknowledge us as Palestinians. One for the Jewish secular groups and one for the Jewish religious groups. And in these different education systems, people study different things. Only the Jews in Israel are allowed to study their modern national history. We, the Palestinians, we also have to study only modern Zionist history. We are not allowed in the education system to study our own history. Teachers who were teaching Palestinian history were expelled from the education system. So another important thing is happening nowadays. We have thousands of students in the Palestinian universities in the West Bank and in Jerusalem, East Jerusalem. These people are mainly studying medicine and things that are very near in the medicine area. The Israeli ministers want to prevent the Palestinian students from going to the West Bank universities because they claim it's only for political discussion. It's not that they have anything about their standards of academic careers or certificates or anything that got to do with academy and universities. It's mainly based on political discussion and political views. So they want also to prevent us from continuing our education in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem universities. I think another very important thing, Khalil, which is happening in my point of view, as a result of this extreme government and the deterioration of the political discourse within the Israeli state and society, is the atmosphere which was shaped by the different political discourses led by Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, Netanyahu, extreme people in the Likud party or in the Shas party. Now the public sphere, the atmosphere is very violent. And this government and these ministers and these extreme people are giving us a feeling that also the public, not just the Israeli army with its policies in the West Bank, with what's happening lately in Jericho, Nablus, or Jenin, or the police forces with their destruction in East Jerusalem, or the different, it's the simple people. They feel more safe now to be more violent against Arab population. There are more attacks on people on buses, Khalil. I'm talking to you now, Israel 2023. Palestinian women who wear scarves because they are religious are being attacked because they are Palestinian women in the buses. Our students in the universities are being attacked. People in the streets are being attacked. Workers in different Jewish cities are being attacked because they are Arabs.
Yeah.
This extreme racist atmosphere is giving more legitimacy to use violence against the people all over, not just all this legislative reform is very important and it is dangerous, but the extreme people, the extreme Israeli audience are not waiting till these laws will pass. they feel more certain to be more violent towards the Palestinian population.
Your time is up, Sami.
Last thing, I'll give you a
Please.
small example, Khalil.
Go ahead.
I was in the flea market nearby my office 2 days ago, and there was a simple conversation between 3 Palestinians, 3 Israeli citizens who are from the Palestinian minority. And the people were talking about their fear and their plans to buy houses in different parts of the world because they feel that the atmosphere is being built again, that they are really terrified in living in this atmosphere, and they are expecting that they will be attacked in everyday life. And it's becoming so dangerous for them that they are really thinking in buying houses in other parts of the world. I will stop here if there are anything that can
Sure, we'll come back to you with some
Thank you.
questions already received. I'm going to paraphrase or combine a couple of questions and address them to all 3 of you. I'd like to hear brief answer from each one of you. When you hear speakers or spokespeople for the new government in Israel, the Netanyahu government, talking about, and the Prime Minister himself said that, the Jewish people have an exclusive and inalienable right to all parts of the land of Israel. The government will promote and develop settlement in all parts of the land of Israel. And he specified in the Galilee, in the Negev, in the Golan, Judea, and Samaria. To me, this is shocking. Having lived in a way in the same piece of real estate that you guys live in many years ago, lumping Judea, Samaria with the Golan, and plus, most importantly, with the Galilee and the Negev. Do you guys, as Israeli citizens, feel like this is a declaration of war on you? I mean, you are being now listed with occupied territories. The Galilee and the Negev with Judea and Samaria. Hassan, what's the legal implication of such statement?
This is very, very important question because this article that you read is the implementation of Article 7 of the Jewish nation state law.
Mm-hmm.
And then we said before the court that this article creates segregation in all the land in Palestine, mandatory Palestine, West Bank, and West Bank is Jerusalem and the Green Line. And the Supreme Court gave its limited interpretation that to limit the scope of Article 7. But now we see that this article has come clearly with the wide interpretation. In fact, this, what you read or said, create 2 things. First, the distinction between the Green Line and the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem. This article erase and delete this distinction in the most important matter, land. Land is very important matter for people who live under the IHL, International Humanitarian Law, that prohibit confiscating their land, prohibit using their land, and it's matter of people who are considered as citizens. What makes citizen is his right for property. So this article erase and delete those concept of citizenship of the Palestinian citizens and the concept of citizenship of Palestinian live under occupation. What's the meaning of the citizenship of Palestinian under occupation? Is the rights that are enshrined and secured in IHL. So this article erase this distinction. Second, this article and what you read show that Israel is the only state today in the world that declare that racial segregation, its main policy.
Yeah.
We don't have one state in the world, whether it's democratic or autocratic or non-democratic state, or any kind of state, even which has some forms of a late post-colonial, like the situation of Northern Ireland, even before the political agreement. We don't have a state that clearly and officially, in the law and in its political agreement, declare that racial segregation is its main policy.
This is the law of the land.
Yeah, this is the leading law, because land is the most important thing in this conflict.
Yeah, thank you, Hassan. Areen, do you have a comment on the same question, please?
Actually, I agree with many of what Hassan said. I think it like this announcement makes it clear, and all the political and also the legal attitudes of the state, this government and the government before, it's make it very clear that we are living in one political geography. Israel is declaring itself formally as an apartheid state. We all the time say that Israel is a settler colonial project and an apartheid state, but now the state is declaring itself as such. And it's not only by declarations. We felt it also after the May event. Israel is punishing the Palestinians in Israel the same way Israel is punishing the Palestinians of the 67. I think it's for Israel is clear, but for the Palestinians should be clear, more clear, and also for the so-called or the not so-called radical left in Jews in Israel. I think it's a call for us to unite and to call for one state, and a democratic anti-Zionist state.
Sami, let's shift gears because we're running out of time quickly. If you want to respond to the same issue, feel free to, but I want to give you another opportunity. Another question just came from Brooke Maddox. The current
Sami. Okay.
The current protest, widely covered in the media, give the impression that there is a wide disagreement in Israel with the new coalition government, but it looks like the Palestinian question has no place in these demonstrations. Is it central to the people who are demonstrating? Is this true or not?
Well, this is exactly the case. I think there are two sides in the Israeli state and society now, that they have a serious political discussion in what is called the reform, the legislative reform. But they disagree on how they should deal with the state institutions, mainly the high courts, but they have a consensus against us, both sides. And when you check them, who is the opposition? Who is leading all these demonstrations? Who are the parties in the Israeli opposition nowadays? You have the extreme Lieberman, who was considered the most extreme politician before Ben-Gvir. You have Gideon Sa'ar, who was the second man in the Likud party, and he was considered more extreme in his political views than Benjamin Netanyahu. Or you have the different generals like Gantz and all the others. So they disagree on the legislative reform. This is the main discussion, but they have a consensus against us. So this is why it's really hard for us as Palestinians to participate in all these demonstrations. When you just see the photos there with all these Israeli flags and people who are talking about Israel before this government was heaven or was a democracy or so, they totally deny our existence. They don't see the occupation at all. They don't see the racial separation within the state. They don't see the racism against us in all fields of life, against us, the Israeli Palestinian citizens. Not just in the West Bank, Gaza, and in East Jerusalem. So there are disagreements, serious disagreements, but they have a consensus against everything which is Arab and Palestinian.
Yeah. One of our member of the audience, Areen, would like for you to expand a little bit on, you mentioned in your presentation, the Shabak, the internal security services exploiting what you said, combating, like to say, crime in the Arab sector. in Israel. What is the purpose here? More control? What is exactly their role, and are they serious about combating crime, which doesn't seem to subside?
Yeah, of course, we believe first the Shabak by definition and by practice is caring and is interested in the interest of in the national and security interests of Israel, the way Israel, of course,
Defines
defines,
it. Yeah.
not in our way. And some of the high officers of the police talked about this, and it was published in Haaretz that this is the situation, that the Shabak is using the crime issue in order to make people, to care for the interest of the Shabak. And lately, of course, we have a new department. It was recommended, and not recommended, the agreements of the coalition is committed to do this. Maybe Hassan can clarify more, to open a unit in the Shabak in order to intervene in the crime issues in the name of supporting or solving the crime issues.
Yeah. Hassan, you mentioned the role of the Haredim in this whole change that's taking place in Israel. They seem to have formed like a lobby within the ruling coalition for essentially pushing toward what they call a Jewish religious state. You mentioned also the Jewish identity of the state. Considering the fact that you guys represent, what, 21% of the population in Israel, how could a state claim to be a democracy, all right, even for its own, people, at the same time, talking about the equivalent of what we would in the United States be puzzled if somebody advocates emphasizing the Christian identity of the state in the United States. What are the legal implications of that call?
Yes, this is like old issues. If you remember, Areen mentioned the struggle of Balad, which was established by Azmi Bshara, and Azmi Bshara was the strong voice for a state for all of its citizens, and he was the first one to challenge politically and massively the definition of Israel as a Jewish state, and to claim that the state must be state for all of its citizens. And because of this struggle, in fact, he brought to himself that the state targeted him and led to the situation that he became out of the homeland. So this is major issue of Israel, the identity of the state as Jewish state. However, within the Zionist political parties, there is discussion and serious discussion to which scope, extent the state must emphasize its Jewishnesses. The central and left, they want thin, what they call it, thin definition in order to allow, as Areen said, procedural democracy. The right wing, they don't care about procedure democracy. They care mostly about the identity of the state. And this is why there is serious debate in Israel. It's not a debate that just for the debate. It's serious. We have today, we can speak about almost two peoples in Israel among the Jewish community. And this brings me also to your question that Sami answer. Yes, I agree with Sami that the Palestinians in both sides, within like the perspective of central left, they are marginalized because they continue to emphasize the state as Jewish state. And of course, under the perspective of the right wing, we are under the violence. So both sides cannot be our strong, one of them cannot be our strong ally. However, this debate in Israel, the demonstration in Tel Aviv, the Palestinian case is the central. We think all the time that's not. No, the Palestinian is the central. How? Israel, as one of what we call settler colonial state, a new state that came on the homeland of other people like South Africa, like US in that time, like in New Zealand, like Australia, those new states, and especially state like Israel that was established in 1948 after the Second World War, they need strongly part of their existence to belong to the West, to be part of the West. In order to be part of the West, you must introduce that you are at least procedural democracy. So this is why the left in Israel are ready to fight for this perspective. Because if you lose the support of the West, you lose your existence. This is why there is the flag of Israel as matter of existence. We are the Israelis. We are the nationalists. We protect from who? From the Palestinian, but from other aspects. We need the support of the West. What the right wing say, this is the new thing of the Israeli right wing policy. We don't care. We don't care about the international community. We don't care about what the West think about us. Why this we don't care came? It has many factors. First, the success. Despite the occupation, Israel had lately normalization agreements with major Arab political states. This is a huge success. Second, the support of Trump, which was a huge support to Israel despite the occupation. And they opened the embassy in East Jerusalem. The silence of the EU. The EU is engaged in the Ukraine. And all of these together, and of course, internally that the central political party and the left, they don't want to make coalition with Netanyahu because the criminal charges against them. So all of this give the right wing the power to say, I don't care. So we have now in Israel two schools. One school wants to continue with the policy of Ben-Gurion to say the existence of the state of Israel in the Middle East, in Palestine, must find the close relationship with the West, must be perceived as Western country. And the right wing say it's enough to continue with this policy. We are a Jewish, religious state or traditional state.
Yeah. Thank you, Hassan. We're out of time, but I have two more questions. I feel they're very important, so we would like to take them, and they're both actually addressed to Sami. One from Tamara Turki and one from Iyas Hasli. The first one, if you don't mind being very brief, Sami, the first one deals with the fact that there is more kind of desensitizing, if you will, taking place globally toward the Palestinian cause, and where criticism of Israel is right now being equated with anti-Semitism. What can the Palestinians do? What can you do as Palestinians, particularly living abroad out of Palestine? What can people do? And Iyas asked also from Sami, do you think that the judicial shakeup or so-called reforms that are being unleashed right now open a door, if you will, or crack the door open for more cooperation between the Palestinian leadership in Israel of different groups or parties to kind of work together with other oppressed communities in order to counter these shakeups or reforms as a legislator yourself or a former legislator?
Thank you, Khalil. Thank you for the questions. First of all, regarding anti-Semitism, all this discussion now, anyone who becomes critical towards Israeli policies is anti-Semite. I think we should have a campaign of our own, Khalil, saying that we Palestinians are Semites. We can't be anti-Semites unless it is self-hatred.
The problem is that's not accepted because some on the other side of the equation or the tracks feel that they have total monopoly over being Semitic.
Yeah,
Right?
I know that. I think that one of our challenges, one of our problems, not of our challenges, Khalil, is that we have been talking to ourselves and to people who are similar to us too much lately.
Yes.
And we should go again and explain the Palestinian issue and the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian struggle again for the world. For those who are activists, for those who are involved, everything looks is taken for granted. I think a lot of the world don't know the basics. And we are talking about the Galilee Foundation is in London. You know, this state of Britain is still celebrating the Balfour Declaration till today. It's not that they are not apologizing for us. They are celebrating the Balfour Declaration till today. With all the crimes that happened after this Balfour Declaration. A lot of the people simply don't know, and we should do the efforts. It's really, you know, when you become politically active and you expect too much, most of the world don't know. They know very little about the Palestinian people and the Palestinian question.
Yes.
It's our work, it's our job to do more explanation. What was the second question, Khalil?
About the current reforms or shakeup of the legal system judicially in Israel. Does it open, if you will, a new opportunity for different groups, whether they are Arabs or others, to cooperate kind of in resisting these reforms or
First
legal
of all,
shakeup?
the current situation. Also, if the reform will not pass, or they will do some work on it, change it, without any relationship to this, we must work united in a much better way to challenge this government and its policies. I think we are going for a very much harder situation than what it was before in all over Palestine, not just within the Greenland, but all over Palestine. These extreme people, the racism is making them blind, and they are feeling so powerful to do everything with violence and with more power and using the armed forces and so on. So it's going to be much more dangerous for everyone. It should unite all of us as Palestinian leadership, but I think it's giving us another chance. But this chance becomes important and positive if we are going to use it as Palestinian leadership to work much more on the international level. I think the world is more ready now than the government that they called it the government of change before. People are more ready to hear more what we have to say. More political regimes are more open-minded to hear the Palestinian perspective. More NGOs are ready to hear us. I think we have a very good chance to work much more as Palestinians and Palestinian supporters on the international level. We should organize our international work much better than what it is now. And I think this is a very good chance to explain the Palestinian story, the Palestinian narrative to people all over, in order at least to make the world see that what we are having here, what we are struggling against, is not a democracy according to its false image. But I think this is a very, when you call it apartheid, it's not enough. There are 5 different reports that were published lately internationally that calls it. I think it's a little bit worse. And this is the most racist society that I have been, and I visited a lot of states. People should see the truth. People should know what is going on in this part of the world in order to support our struggle. And I will finish with this. Our main struggle, Ya Khalil, is that we are struggling for justice and equality for all, Palestinians and Jews, not just for us. We are struggling for peace, justice, and equality for all. This is our main struggle. And we need the international support in order to get there.
To illustrate your point, look at the conflict right now between the American Jewish community and this current government in Israel over this so-called judicial shakeup and reforms, where the majority of American Jews are totally uncomfortable with what's happening in Israel. And they are even lobbying the administration to oppose the reforms that are being threatened to be pursued by the new government. At any rate, we barely scratched the surface. We could have used 2 more hours. I thank you all. Thank you, Sami. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Hassan, for your generosity in giving us that time.
Khalil,
Good
maybe
chunk of
just a
your time.
recommendation for a book, because we barely scratched the issue. There's
Yeah.
a very good book that talks about the Palestinians within the state of Israel. People know about
Yeah.
us by Mad Al-Karmel. It's called The Palestinian Citizens in Israel, edited by Professor Nadim Rouhana and Arish Sabbagh. It's a very good textbook as an introduction on Palestinian issues, mainly within the Green Line.
Thank you,
All
Sam,
right.
for the PR.
That's right. Hareen, thanks you for plugging the book. It's a great book. I know the writers, and I've seen it, and I also personally recommend it. Thank you all. Again, a special thanks to our audience, the participants, for joining us today. If you're interested in the Galilee Foundation, our website is galileefoundation.org.uk. Take a look at it, and if you care to help the foundation, click on the donate button. We hope to see you in a future webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.